Hey there and welcome back to another My Hero Academia review. The first one for the newly released Season 6, which picks up from the ending of the Endeavor Agency arc and begins one of the franchise's biggest arcs ever, the Paranormal Liberation War. And honestly, from the manga, this was one of my favourite arcs, and it's pretty exciting to see it put to screen, so hopefully they do it justice. And so with all that being said, let's jump into the video. So we start off the season with the classic recap. Pretty much just summarising everything you need to know to really understand what's going on in the broader sense, recapping quirks and who Midoriya is and how there's an evil lurking in the shadows. Before jumping into the Paranormal Liberation front and setting up that they're going to be clashing with the heroes very soon, that they're planning to bring about a new world order. Before we cut into the new intro. And yeah, I don't know, I think I just really got attached to the old intro themes, which leaves me pretty bitter and unwilling to accept a new one, because at first I hated this. But I guarantee that I will be very sad to see it go once I've had time to grow accustomed to it. Hell, I literally just listened to it back now, and I'm already starting to feel a tingle of starting to think, oh, that's actually kind of good. But anyway, the episode begins focusing back on Hawks in the month leading up to the Sting operation. He's back chilling at the Liberation Front Mountain Lodge, and we get a relatively heartwarming scene where Twice approaches Hawks and asks him for his help. He's feeling insecure in his role within the army as one of its leaders, and feels like he needs a specific credo to pass along to his subordinates. But he's coming up blank, and is now overthinking everything and starting to panic and spiral in true Twice fashion. And this gives the show time for Hawks to explain via monologue how the Liberation Army works, just so the audience can better understand things going forward. Under Shigaraki, there are the lieutenants, and each of them leads a squad, which in turn has 3 or so powerful subordinates. And one of these subordinates, Sanctum, who works under Twice, has gotten in his head, trying to shape him into a more respectable leader, which of course is kicking off this mental crisis. And I gotta say, Twice is by far my favourite villain character in this show, and his friendship with Hawks is very cute. Although it is a shame that it's certainly going to end in betrayal and angst, but I'll enjoy it while it lasts. We then learn from Hawks' monologue that he has only a very generalised idea of the actual command structure of the Liberation Army, but that he started to understand how it was formed in the first place. How there's this extreme resentment towards the current system, which can feel oppressive and like it favours those with flashy and exciting quirks, whilst also wanting the undesirable quirks to hide away from the world and suppress who they are. And so he uses that information to make up a pretty generic credo for Twice to recite, which talks about tearing down existing power structures and praising Redestro for his bloodline, bringing them all together under a single banner. And of course, Twice eats this shit up and off he goes. Whilst Hawks thinks about the realities of their plan, how the army wants to destroy the existing system and attack all major cities at once to create a lawless district for them to begin to rule over. And that sounds very terrible and chaotic, and very much like a whole lot of people are going to die brutal deaths quite imminently. So basically, they want to destroy the existing power structures through large-scale terrorist attacks, and then replace the existing system with a Wild West where everybody's free to use their quirks and strength is the factor that determines success. It's basically a throwback to the origin of quirks and the rise of All for One. So pretty much the end of Japan. And then realistically, this would start to happen worldwide as they continue to expand their influence across the globe and knock down government after government. But then we get out of his head again, and Twice looks back over his shoulder and thanks Hawks for being such a good friend and always looking out for him. And yeah, it is sad. The dude trusts him so much and he's gonna feel so betrayed. And I think this is really good writing, because it makes you sympathise with the deranged terrorist who wants to kill thousands of people. But the fact that the good guy, the undercover hero, is going to inevitably betray him, it makes you feel bad for the terrorist. Especially when you learn that the only reason that Hawks is being so close to him to begin with is that he's learned that he's overcome his trauma. And so now, Twice has become perhaps the most dangerous member of the group, because his power is limitless and overwhelming when it's used to its maximum potential, as we saw when he obliterated the Liberation Army during the big coup. Hawks also reflects on how Twice, due to his trusting nature, had let slip that Shigaraki's getting stronger, getting more quirks to make him more of a threat. Before they double down on that sense of betrayal, as they talk about how Hawks couldn't be a bad guy, he couldn't betray them, as he's working to help his friends, the Liberation Army. Ah, damn. But yeah, there is also a double meaning in that sentence. Hawks is a hero, and thus he's not a bad guy, and he's also working to help his friends, his true friends, and helping to protect society at large. And then the episode well and truly kicks off. We see the prelude to war, the calm before the storm. Dr. Garaki walking through the halls of the hospital, not a care in the world, as Deku narrates how this dude is a pretty big deal, having opened hospitals and orphanages and nursing homes around Japan. And that's likely just to steal quirks for All For One or for the Nomus, now that you think about it. And that just makes things feel all the more sinister. He's considered a bit eccentric, a bit harmless. And that gave him the perfect cover story and allowed him to operate in the shadows more efficiently. A true predator. As who would ever suspect the silly and kindly old man of any wrongdoing? And so, then we get a look at the hospital raid team, which is pretty stacked, honestly. Endeavour, Gran Torino, Wild Wild Pussycats, Eraserhead, Present Mike, Mirko, Wash, Crust, Ryukyu. Plenty of heavy hitters here, and a bunch of whom are in the top 10. The police then go over their plan, that simultaneously this team and another led by Edgeshot are going to hit 2 high priority targets. The first is a hospital, and the second team's going to hit the mountain villa that the Liberation Front operates out of. Hero Corps students will also be deployed as backup for these 2 teams and for the city team, and they'll also be in charge of evacuating the city once everything starts to really kick off. And so, off the armies march, with Edgeshot's team looking significantly larger than Endeavour's, but I guess they'd probably need to expect far more resistance at the home base, as opposed to the secret hospital base that nobody's supposed to know about. The only difference here, really, is that 4 Hero Corps students have been drafted to the front lines for the mountain raid. There's Mushroom Girl and Mudman, as well as Tokoyami and Kaminari. Basically characters with really strong utility quirks that'd be very useful in a major combat situation. Of course, one of them panics and is then comforted by Midnight, who promises that they only need to help a little bit and then they can return to the rear guard. Yeah, right. This is going to be an all-out slugfest. There's no running away now. And so, of course, Kaminari shits his pants, because why wouldn't you? He thinks he should never have been brought out to the front lines to begin with. Before we cut to the rearguard characters, who serve to give the audience that exposition about why these specific characters were chosen for the role, and like I said earlier, it's pretty much because their quirks are really strong and can impact a lot of enemies all at once. And at the same time, we see that PLF members around Japan are getting attacked and apprehended, as the sleeper agent Slide and Go gets dominated by Death Arms out of nowhere. And good, dude was pretentious last time we saw him, get rid of him, take him down a peg. And then we cut to the Team Endeavour rearguard, where the team's preparing to start evacuating the city, as we see the order go out for the mission to begin, and our junior heroes rush into the city to evacuate block by block. Whilst Endeavour stomps his way into the hospital, quickly ordering Mirko to go to the morgue, whilst Mandalay calls for an evacuation via her telepathy. And the doctor gets caught out and promptly shits himself once he sees the army of heroes here to get him. And fair enough. I too would shit myself. We then cut away to Endeavour's other children, who are talking about how much he's changed and how he even bothered to tell them he'd be working for a while and wouldn't be in contact today. With the 2 of them hoping that it's not going to go badly like it did when he fought the high-end Nomu. And yeah, a scene like this pretty much confirms that it won't be as bad, it's going to be much worse. Much, much worse. And so, back in the hospital, the doctor's been easily apprehended, and it's discovered that he has an anti-aging quirk that extends his life and makes him look younger than his years, which is also how All For One is so old as well. And after some interrogation about the Nomus, Aizawa asks him to stand down and to surrender so that nobody needs to get hurt fighting Nomus. And yeah, obviously since the dude's a villain, he was never going to take that option. The doctor says forgive me, which seems to be a trigger word for the Nomus, as he quickly dies as a Nomu smashes through the floor, and Mirko gets swarmed in the lower corridors as she makes her way to the morgue. And as Garaki dies, it's revealed that he was just a twice clone, and the real Doc is hiding in the basement, getting ready to escape as the battle kicks off above ground. He gathers a few stocked quirks and orders his little Nomu Johnny, who's his teleporter, to warp him and Shigaraki, who's still marinating in quirk juice, off to safety. But sadly for him, Mirko's gone beast mode already and slaughtered like 5 Nomu back to back, and then kicks in the door, killing little Johnny in the process and preventing the Doc's escape. And yeah, once again he is shitting himself. And honestly, once again, I get it. This would be scary. And so, that brings us to the end of the episode. And it was a pretty decent episode, all things considered. A lot of interesting setup and exposition that served to up the stakes and set the tension of the scenes. Exposition that ensured that the audience knows what's at stake here and how dangerous the mission's going to be. And I also liked that it didn't immediately become the Deku and Friends show. They're in the rearguard right now because they're students and they're not going to join in until the first wave of heroes gets defeated. It makes sense for the story more this way, and it ends up making Deku and Bakugou and Todoroki seem all the more impressive, as the villains they're going to fight will have torn their way through all these pros and now they have to fight them. And the preview promises even more action and battles. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next episode for sure. But anyway, with all that being said, these are just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Do you like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know.